Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's school committee meeting. Matt, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, it's kind of a special meeting. We only have one agenda item, and that's to talk about the budget. Typically at our meetings, we have two sections for public input, one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end. If there's anybody that would like to speak prior to our discussion about the budget, about anything that you're here to talk to the school committee about, you can do it. If you would prefer to wait until after we've had our discussion and then chime in, you can do that too. So is there anybody who would like to speak for the school committee before we get into the meeting?
Well, yeah, you want to do it now?
Sure. You can do both. I just don't want you to think this is your only chance, that's all. Everybody's going to get another chance, and you can take advantage of both.
Great. I'll lead off. Good evening, everyone. Justin McCarthy, 7 Stony Stream Lane. So I was able to review the information, the packet that you all have tonight online, so thanks for posting that. And this is my third time back to talk about steps towards tuition-free kindergarten. And I've spoken with all of the school committee members, and it appears that everyone is sort of in unison here that this is something that we would love to accomplish or certainly work towards. Your goal, I believe, your budgetary goal for this year was to provide $120,000 offset towards the kindergarten tuition. The packet that you've got tonight, I believe, shows that essentially you have $112,000 left over after all your requirements, after all of your spending needs. And essentially what I'm asking for you folks to do tonight is to take the $112,000 that you have, apply it towards the $120,000 goal that you set, which is essentially 93% of goal, which would be an A- or potentially an A. And we could move on going forward. So it only accomplishes step one, but it's certainly something well within your power that you folks can do tonight. And I would love to see that take place. So I'll stick around for the discussion. There might be other folks that wish to speak, may or may not. We've got a couple of folks in the audience here tonight. I just want to reiterate that it is very difficult to get parents of young families here at the school committee meetings. Every single one of you received my email, and you've received multiple emails from folks that are in support of this. My email had an attachment with 60 signatures. I shared that with the Board of Selectmen. I shared that with FinCom. And we've kind of gone through this process of, well, where are we going to get the money from? And here we are tonight. You guys have the money. You've got 93-point-something% of the money that you're looking for, and I'm asking you to spend it.
So, thank you, Justin. Just as a point of clarification, the $112,000 balance, which we will talk about,
Sure,
is related to the school choice funds that we're projecting to bring in this year.
absolutely.
And we have $338,000 of it earmarked in the analysis that we're going to present tonight, and there's a balance of $112 left over.
Yes.
And I'm sure that will be a big part of our discussion.
All right. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah, thank you.
You next.
Anybody else?
Are you going? You're not going? Okay,
No.
I'll go with it. Hello, I'm Jen Wilson, 22 Sanderson Road. I have a son who is currently in pre-K right now. And so I've talked to some parents and some parents who are teachers maybe in other districts, and they said, the curriculum being pushed all to the morning of the program is really, really difficult, and the parents would love to have their students not pressured so much during the early morning, and if we could spread it out throughout the day and offer a full day tuition-free kindergarten, that would be great. I think, as Justin said, any money that we can put towards that and reduce the amount of tuition for the students would be super, super helpful. So, thank you.
I'd like to talk about that point amongst ourselves for a minute. One thing to keep in mind is that even if we got to a tuition-free, or started to get towards a tuition-free model, the point is that full-day kindergarten is not mandatory in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And I think we have, about 81% of our kids are currently participating, even though we are charging tuition. The assumption would be that if we go to a tuition-free model, that percentage would go up because common sense would dictate that there are some families who are choosing not to participate because of the cost. However, when we first introduced the concept of any type of full-day kindergarten in Littleton, there were significant people who said, I will never do that, I don't think it's healthy for my kid. So the idea that we're going to get to 100% participation is not going to happen, and because it's not mandatory. And when we talk about the curriculum delivery mechanism, we need to keep that in mind, because even if we get closer to 100%, we're not going to have 100%. And the reason that right now that we've been told by the administration that we deliver it in that way is to not penalize the kids that aren't coming all day. Now, we have had some indication from the superintendent that we might be willing to, or be able to revisit how we deliver the curriculum regardless of whether or not we go tuition-free. But we need to keep in mind that we might not, even if we do go tuition-free, we might still not be able to make that decision in good conscience to go to pushing out over the whole day, because we're just not going to have every kid in there. And it could still be a significant percentage. I don't know how I would define a significant percentage, 5%, 10%, I don't know. But that is a debate we would have to have before we would be able to say, well, let's just, deliver, the standard curriculum throughout the 6-hour day instead of, half a day.
So at the town level, we cannot require parents to send their kids to all-day kindergarten?
Correct.
That's correct. Correct.
So I just want to make sure that we're all cognizant of that as we go forward with the discussion. Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. Let's dive into what we have in the agenda. So we have a presentation that we put together to the Budget Subcommittee. The first slide here just shows what our original presentation was back in January at the Budget Summit, where these are the things we had earmarked, and we're looking for about a $1.149 million increase in our current spending level for these items that we saw here. Subsequent presentation of the same items made to FinCom and the Board of Selectmen at a joint meeting. There was an attempt to qualify what could be regarded as a level service budget. And the problem with this scenario was that when we presented it, there was no funding available for the other items that we felt on our priority list for FY18 that we needed to have met if we could. And when we first presented this, even at $808,000, there was a deficit in the model that the town had in terms of the overall spending projected for all the town departments, including the school department, and the revenue they expected to take in. All right, the next slide was an attempt by the admin team in consultation with the Budget Subcommittee to rework the priorities based on the assumption that the town can only support an increase of $808,000. What had happened was, and we talked about this at a previous meeting, subsequently the town was able to revisit their model and look at their revenue sources, and the model that they put forward did support the $808,000 increase, about $807,000, we're rounding, along with other increases in other town departments, fire, police, highway, and a couple other things. So when we realized that we could support at least the $808,000, the Budget Subcommittee went back and took a look at things with the admin team. We received some notification of some lane changes, so we had to adjust the salary increase. It had been $586, it's up to $597,000. We're also proposing that we fund the following items with the appropriation increase that's being supported with by the town. So the $71,000 for sped case and out-of-district tuition, the increase in salary for the cafeteria staff. We're going to add the additional staff, regular ed classroom, the ELL teacher at Russell Street, the regular ed classroom teacher at Russell Street, and the shared Title I math specialist between Russell Street and Shaker Lane. Totaling those up, we have $804,000 allocated out of the increase in appropriation, with a small balance of $3,000 left over. What's left out of that, at least initially, after looking at it and realigning our priorities, was the increase in the sped case transportation, operational costs, which are the custodial, increase in the custodial contract, and potential increase in water usage, supplies and materials for the 4 buildings, the shared specialist between Russell Street and Shaker Lane, the assistant principal and the first go at reducing tuition for full-day kindergarten. The admin team took a look at some of the things in the budget, and what they realized was we could probably fund the assistant principal and the shared specialist between Russell Street and Shaker Lane, which is a total of $150,000. Currently, the middle school librarian and a math specialist position are in our budget, but are unfilled. We had vacancies, we've been trying to fill them, we hadn't been able to do it. What we had done with the middle school librarian, that's being staffed by a ed assistant. And what the admin team is proposing to do is that we continue to staff the middle school librarian with an ed assistant again next year, that's already in the budget. And with the math specialist position, we would leave it open for FY18. That position has two components. One is providing professional development for teaching staff and the other is working directly with the students. What the admin team is proposing is that the professional development portion of that position for FY18 would be met by hiring consultants and using available professional development funds, while existing staff would be used to augment the work with the students that position would otherwise be doing. The funds are made available with that by doing those two things, along with using $39,000 of school choice, gets us to the $150,000 that would be required to fund the assistant principal and the shared specialist at Russell Street and Shaker Lane. Two other items that we think we can do, the sped case transportation and the supplies and materials, which is a total of $16,000. The way we would do this is we would take that remaining balance available out of the appropriation at $3,000 and then tap school choice for $13,000 more, and that total would allow us to meet those two budget priorities. The next two things that we talked about with the admin team was the custodial contractor, which was a projected increase in the contract of $40,000. What they're proposing to do is part of that contract, what we receive in services is a supervisory position from the contractor. What we're proposing to do is to take that out of the contract and instead hire staff, someone that would work for the district. And Tigers Den has been asking for some added custodial services. They have a healthy balance in their revolving funds. We actually are collecting more in tuition each year than we are spending on the current expenses for staffing and other materials for Tigers Den. What we would do is we would take the supervisory position and pay for it out of the Tigers Den revolving account through the receipts and the revolving account that exists. And that person would work a portion of the hours of their day strictly for Tigers Den, and then they would do some other general custodial contracting, custodial services at Russell Street, and also act in that supervisory role. We've been struggling to get the services we're supposed to get from our contracting firms that we've worked with, and we feel that, or the admin team feels that by having someone who works for the district and reports directly to us, we're going to have a much better chance of getting the value that we expect to receive for all the money that we're spending on contracted custodial services. So that's the idea there. We would get that benefit, we would fund it out of the Tigers Den revolving account. The next item that we dealt with was the projected water increases. That $30,000 number that we put in there was off a memo provided by the Littleton Water Department on what they thought we would need to do you saw what happened to the fields at the high school this summer. We were in a significant drought situation. We weren't really watering it enough. And they revisited how much water they think, or how much time they need to run the sprinklers each night during the summer and at other times. In an initial evaluation of that, it was about $30,000. Whether or not that's going to hold, we don't know. But what we decided to do was, and the other thing to keep in mind is there's been some talk about pulling out the field maintenance costs across the town and putting it as a separate budget item so that there's more transparency in how we fund it, how we collect the money for it. That hasn't been determined how we're going to do that yet. There's a lot of discussion that has to go on between the highway department, the school department, and Park and Rec relative to how we're going to do that. But regardless, if we think we're going to keep that in the budget, we would again just cover it through school choice for FY18 while we get a better handle on how we're going to do it. The good news is that we put a separate meter in at the high school during February break, so we will be able to accurately quantify going forward how much water is used specifically to irrigate the fields up there. We have never been able to do that before because it was all coming in through one meter, the water being used to flush toilets and run the sinks and fountains and anything else, along with the water on the fields.
Just one comment. The alumni field update will include a separate meter for any watering necessary for the softball field and the other fields. there
Right, so
also.
I think the point being that, for now, the right thing to do is, we're still modeling it because that's the information we got from the water department, directly from the water department. We'll hold it in there, we'll hold it in school choice for the time being. It could very well go down, and it could very well be a determination that it's really no longer a school department budget item. Because we can meter it separately, the water department can just say, the charges on that meter go to, Park and Rec, and they charge, the youth groups for that, the way they charge them for seating and other things like that. That's to be determined, but that's a possibility. So we're just gonna, for now, we'll leave it in the budget, but we're gonna cover it through school choice.
Do you mind if I just interject?
Yes, absolutely.
With this here, if the town does move to a separate line item for that, we're not taking school choice money and transferring it to the town, are we? I'm just,
Yes,
I want to be careful about what we're talking about.
So here's the thing. Right now, the way the MOU between the school department, Park and Rec, and the highway department works, specific to the fields, is the highway department has a budget item for the labor that's put on the fields. They pay the salaries for those guys who work on the fields, and that just comes out of their budget. The Park and Rec is in charge of collecting fees from youth athletics to cover the other materials, mostly seed, paint, fertilizer, lime, I think are the big ticket items. And what they do is they figure out each year how much they need of that, and whatever number it is, they do a model and they say, okay, youth lacrosse used the fields this much of the time, and soccer used it this much, and softball and baseball, and they apportion it, and they say, okay, you guys owe us 30% of what we paid for that, you guys owe us 65%, however they do it, and they collect that money goes to pay those bills. The school department is not charged for any of that, even though our athletes are on the fields. Because we offer back to the Park and Rec department access to our buildings without charge. It's kind of a quid pro quo, service in kind, access to our buildings for their classes and their programs that they run inside versus outside. Having said that, because we couldn't meter, or we weren't metering the water flow, particularly to the fields, and we were really only paying, less than $10,000 at the high school, right, for our total water bill, regardless of whether or not it was going to flush toilets or irrigate the field, we just absorbed that. So in my mind, there has to be a robust discussion and reevaluation of how the MOU is going to be executed and who's responsible for what. And once we make that determination, then we can figure out where's the money coming from. But given the way the MOU is supposed to work right now, I would find it hard to acquiesce to us being asked to pay for the water, because even though we have been doing it, because it was really we did it because it wasn't much money and there was really no way to quantify it, or it would have been difficult to quantify it, so we didn't bother. I think now we need to think about how that's going to be done, and then once that determination is made as a town, the boards will figure out how to pay for it. But I agree with you, I don't think it's fair to the school department to reflexively assume that, and the other thing is that the amount that's being charged for the water has gone up dramatically. So that is just a new development, and we need to think about the impact of that on the town and the various departments. So I fully expect to have a lot of discussion about this with those three parties, and I'm not making any assumptions that it's going to come right out of our budget at all.
Well, because if it does come around to that, I mean, I think I have a lot to say about that, because that watering the field is not an education priority for me here when it comes down to making trade-offs of where we're going to use funds.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So. All right, so The only thing that we don't have covered at the moment in the model that we're projecting, which is the increase of $807,000 in the appropriation in the use of school choice funds, is the $120,000 as the first effort to move towards tuition-free full-day kindergarten. Next slide, we show, so what we're projecting when we talk about school choice, and we'll look at the whole picture of all our revolving funds in a moment, but school choice, we're projecting to take in $450,000 this year. Of that, we always have $250,000. It's an annual salary offset. It's been in the budget since I've been on the budget subcommittee, which is 11 years. So that's always earmarked and is allocated for that purpose. Based on what we talked about tonight, I'm going to put in these other items. The assistant principal and Russell Street specialist are going to be not paid in full, but subsidized by school choice. The sped transportation and supplies and materials subsidized through school choice. And for the moment, you know, the increase in the water usage is still on our ledger. That's $338,000, which leaves a balance of $112,000 on what we're projecting to take in school choice in FY18. In terms of the way we've always approached school choice usage, we've never spent every dollar that we've taken in a given year. We've been coming closer and closer year by year. And when I was first on the school committee, we really didn't spend anything beyond the $250,000 annual salary offset, because there was an agreement between the school committee, the FinCom, and the Board of Selectmen. We thought it would be financially prudent to build a reserve up in school choice, and at the time, circuit breaker as well. And we did that. And that was definitely the philosophy and the direction at the time. When things got tight during the recession, we've relaxed that standard to a degree, and we annually have had discussions here to what degree are we comfortable relaxing it. The other thing to keep in mind is this is a budget model. It's not we don't know for sure that these things are going to actually happen across the whole budget. And we've been conservative about our estimates of how much we're willing to use. And typically, we've been fortunate, because what the admin team does is when they start executing on the budget, if there are opportunities for some efficiencies, you know, for instance, we have a retirement or somebody goes out on long-term leave, we don't end up spending as much on that salary item. The sub that we bring in to take that person's place isn't as much. Those things happen. We've been able to, year by year, even though we've earmarked a certain amount of money to spend out of school choice, we haven't actually realized it. And we've been able to keep that balance up. Actually, Steve, if you go to the next slide, it'll show. So this is a picture of our projected balances and usage, and where we're going to end up at the end of FY18 for all our revolving funds. The two big ones are right at the top, school choice and the circuit breaker. And you can see that we're projecting to end FY17 with about $832,000 in school choice. We would take in the $450,000, projected to spend $338,000 on the current model, and then that leaves us a balance of $944,000. Obviously, the reason that we've always really wanted to keep a healthy balance in there is because if there is bad news in terms of executing on the budget, which is primarily our greatest concern, is children moving into the district during the year who require, you know, significant sped services. We want to fund that through our the reserves that we've built up, rather than go back to the town and say, you know, we need more money because we didn't expect to have that, and we budgeted everything down to the last dime, and there's nothing left. So the question in the debate that we've had annually is, you know, where is our tolerance level for how much we want to be reliant on school choice. The other thing is that it's always been the philosophy of the school committee, at least as I understand and remember it, and I've been here, is that anything that we fund out of school choice, we're always striving to roll into the operating budget and the appropriation from the town in short order. We typically expect to get it off of the school choice line item and into the appropriation the next year. So for instance, if a student moves in and requires some services and we have to tap the reserve to pay for it. We're going to roll that into the appropriation increase next year so that, we have it budgeted correctly on an ongoing basis through the appropriation. So that's what we've always done before. So when we think about these things, this $338,000, I fully expect that we need to move those things towards the appropriation next year. If we replace it with other priorities next year, that's fine. If it's sustainable, we'll do it. But we really need to be careful about getting in the business of sustaining operations through revolving accounts, because we can't always expect that we're going to get $450,000 a year in school choice. We may realize that we can't keep those seats open as those kids graduate out of the system. It would be a rash assumption to think that we can automatically replace them that same number of seats. So that's where the budget subcommittee is, working with the admin team. I'd like to have a discussion tonight about how we feel about it, because the goal would be to reach a consensus tonight that how we want to execute on the budget. Do we want to take things off? Do we want to add things in? Do we want to fight for more money in the appropriation? But we need to have, our public hearing to vote the budget is 2 weeks away from tonight on the 23rd. And we need to get direction tonight to prepare for that vote and go forward from there.
If I can jump in. I think we've been really prudent with our budget, particularly when we look at how we've had to adapt with some of those costs that we weren't really anticipating on our wish list. Water isn't on our wish list. It's just something that we're going to do every year, and when it shoots up quite a bit here. The custodial contract, moving that to Tiger Sen, I think that was a pretty creative solution, which I think makes sense given the success of the Tiger Sen program and the agreement we have arranged with them. I think it makes a lot of sense. If we can go to the last slide, showing the account balances. The ending balance, the 944, ending balance for school choice is the highest ending balance we've had for school choice since I've been on the board. So the last 4 years. I don't know how much further back that is, but certainly since FY15, and I can't imagine it was very high in FY13 or 14 when we were really hurting. So that would be nearly $1 million in school choice that we have as a reserve in case things go wrong between now and the end of next year. We've never had to dip into it that much. I'm glad it's there. I do think that at a certain point, if we are continually saving and saving and saving, nearly, I don't want to say, I want to say 40% higher than what our usual level was 4 years ago. FY15, our ending balance was $642,000, and we were happy with that. Maybe not, gleeful, but, pretty satisfied with that. FY16, our balance was $755. FY17, our ending balance was $832. I think we have the opportunity here to maintain that very high balance of $832 that we began that we will begin FY18 with, that we will end this current year with, the highest we've had in, again, a long time, probably at least 5 years, possibly longer. I'm not sure where we were, in FY10 or FY11, but that's sort of how far back we're going to try to look for a comparison. And we could keep that high balance of FY17 and relieve the burden that is on the students and families in our town. That is, I know it's a priority for all of us. It was in our budget priority, but I think we have the opportunity now to act on it. And it's not the 120, it's 112, which is, I think it was Justin who said that's an A-. I would be happy with an A-
So
this year.
I don't want to interrupt you, but is that 112, and Justin, the 112 brings us to 232?
93, is that what you're saying is 93%?
No, what he's saying, you're right, he's saying
93% of the 120, that's 120,000 we had.
So
we had hoped to
the
spend.
anticipated, what would be the anticipated cost of the full-day kindergarten?
The whole, so we were gonna break it into the 3 years?
Yeah, if we were to fund that this coming year.
All 3 years?
No, as planned.
So,
it would be 120 each year.
120.
Okay.
So,
Over
the
30, so it'd be
first
120,
year,
120.
it was 120, 120, and then I think it either jumped down or up
Those
$10,000. But in that-
sevens per-
Right,
but things are
Let's be
changing.
careful
Yeah.
about that. That's 120, 240, 360.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
Right.
This kind of thing there on it.
Year one will be 120, yeah, and then be an additional 120 in addition.
Right.
No, but you're gonna pay $240,000 out of the budget in year two to sustain tuition, getting towards
If we take the
tuition-free.
second step next year.
Right, and then the third year, you're gonna
Wait, let me
pay.
guess, I mean, another 120 the third year.
Well, no, but I want to make it clear, because we're not talking $120,000 three times, it's increasing.
Right.
Right,
There.
yeah.
And-
understand.
Well, that can get
120
easily
plus
lost,
340 plus 300.
because the town is,
Exactly.
we have to look at how sustainable this is over
It's not
time.
a capital purchase, it's not
Right,
something
right.
that you buy and you have.
Yeah.
It's
Cumulative over time.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And the program costs are going up.
So, another quick question, the line item that we have here for the full-day kindergarten shows $109,000 ending balance. What's the purpose of that cushion?
Every year, we are faced with some parents who have difficulty paying their bills.
Okay.
So, like any cash flow organization, you never receive 100% payment. You try, but you don't.
So that's an educated estimate of a safe cushion to run the
Well,
program?
we're estimating 125 to 130 students next year, so if you work out the numbers.
And by way of explanation, when they do kindergarten registration, they also collect a deposit, and so some of this is a deposit
Yeah.
that we've collected for next year already.
So
makes sense.
it's
So
accounted
it's sort of
for.
encumbered already.
Right.
It's-
And then, what's our policy on free and reduced lunch students that want full-day kindergarten?
They're eligible.
So that would come out of this balance
Yes.
also?
Yes.
I just want to, put all of the pressures that are on that number.
And
Yeah.
sped services.
It's a good point.
A sped component as well.
The tuition we charge for full-day kindergarten does not cover the entirety of the cost of providing full-day kindergarten. As a matter of fact, when I was first on the school committee and Paul Avella was with us, we realized that we were asking the tuition-paying families to effectively subsidize, to a degree, the non-tuition paying students, and we said, no, that can't happen. And we pulled that out, and we made sure that the amount being charged was to cover just that student, effectively, I mean, you can't get down to the last dollar, but effectively, the idea was that the amount you pay covers your child's costs of attending full-day kindergarten. And the children that are in tuition-free for whatever reason, whether it's free and reduced lunch or an IEP or whatever it is, the district covers that out of the appropriate, in the operating budget. So that's an important point.
So all students who would be free or reduced lunch get tuition-free full-day kindergarten?
Well,
It's a sliding scale, right?
no, if they're eligible for free and reduced, we've been waiving the tuition. We do, there is a lottery process.
To get in.
Right, so technically,
to get in?
technically, we've offered free and reduced 2 slots per each class. We've never really bumped up on anything. I've been here for 11 years, and we've had a lottery 1 year where we had more requests than the slots, and that year we just let everybody in because it was only 11 or 12 slots, I think. So it's,
So
but
above 90%
Yes.
of folks who are interested who get free and reduced get the tuition waived.
Correct.
And it's not, so if you're reduced but not free, it's still, for lunch, it's still free full day.
Correct.
Okay. That's good, in my view, that we have that.
And those costs are taken out of operational.
They're not taken out of tuition.
Yeah, okay.
The cost
For the free and
for
reduced.
free and reduced.
Yeah, to the point I made a moment ago.
I was
about
mistaken
we're not asking.
when I stated.
Right, we're not asking the parents that do pay tuition, they're not subsidizing anybody who qualifies for zero tuition.
So when we look at the full-day kindergarten revolving fund, we look at the $250K every year for the last 2 or 3 years, and we look at the $100,000 and change, throw that in, that 109 is a snapshot, but factoring that in, that's just a cost of educating all of the tuition-paying students for full-day K. Is that an
The
accurate?
250?
The 250 plus the revolving fund.
No, the $250,000 helps defer salary costs K through 12. Because we have school choice students, K through 12.
No, he's talking about the.
For the kindergarten program.
Oh, specific to the kindergarten, okay.
250 is showing up a bit much tonight, I think.
Yes.
But for the full-day K, 250, which is the expenses we have for 18 and 17, was 250 each of those years, plus the ending balance of 109.
So the revenue we take in for the kindergarten tuition, and I haven't looked at the numbers in a couple of months, but it's less than half of what the total program costs are.
Right, you gotta be careful, that 250 is not the cost of full-day kindergarten.
Right, I understand.
It's right, it's the amount of the revolving fund that we use to subsidize the total cost of full-day kindergarten, which to Steve's point is, what you're saying is about 50%?
It's a little bit less than 50%, I believe, these days, because the costs have ratcheted up over the years for steps and lane changes for the teachers, and we haven't increased the tuition rates or any of that. So it's actually been kind of shifting more toward the operational budget by default.
Can I make a request about the presentation? Would it be possible to get, for the next meeting, having this presentation with headers as to what each one of these slides are? Because until we were here with the narrative from Mike, it doesn't make sense what we're looking at on these slides. There's just numbers on pages without saying, like, what was our initial ask, this is what's being funded, and how it's being funded. When you read through this presentation without having it narrated, you can't tell what's what. It doesn't tell you what I'm looking at. You know, these numbers don't mean
I
anything.
understand what you're saying. And we're going to look at some of the information Daryl brought back from the MASC about, different ideas for presenting the budget. And part of that is augmenting the narrative, with, writing it down more. I mean, the problem is that if we write down every thought we have about the budget in the slides, you can't present it.
No, so I think there's two strategies. One is how it's conveyed to the public, but I'm a school committee member and didn't know until I was sitting in here that the $120,000 that was on this PowerPoint is not being funded by the proposal that we've got going right now.
Well,
just no way, there's no way of telling that.
I take full responsibility for that.
But no, that's not your fault, it's just the way.
Well, I mean, the problem is, I made an assumption that as school committee members, we have and again, it was a faulty assumption.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I've been doing the budget for so long that I guess I made an assumption that everybody's as conversant on every budget item as I am.
No, it's just because I didn't know that.
I understand where you're coming from there, and I guess what I was viewing is this was a work session and not a formal presentation session.
Right.
So I read between the lines a lot on here. I agree, but I think, I've asked Mike and them to look at different ways of presenting the budget.
But I appreciate the point.
No, just for my, just the title of that slide, even just something simple as like a header saying that this is money that, under this new calculation, since we only got the 808 instead of what we're asking for, this is the number that we're either trying to make up, you can phrase it however you want, but I looked at this 120, and when I was coming into the meeting, I thought, great news, it says 100, I was misinterpreting that as we had found that money somewhere, so.
I have looked at the information that Daryl brought back, and looking at what Worcester Public Schools does, because I think that was the district that MASC highlighted as a strong budget presentation. So Mike and I are going to get together sometime between now and the next 2 weeks, and maybe we will debut a new budget presentation.
But like I said, I think there can be two things. Like, I think this is really great. I don't want to knock the work. I mean, I couldn't do the work that you guys do. Let me just say that. I think maybe there can be like like the working nitty-gritty part of it, and then how you present it publicly can be a separate,
Have the
entirely
narrative,
separate
yeah.
Right,
thing, yeah.
right.
And I think that would just have been, or will be helpful for me the next meeting, so that,
I mean, part of the difficulty, and I'm going to defend Mike a little bit here, because I would love to have an email exchange to give some suggestions for the charts, but we're not allowed to because of the open meeting law here, so I mean, they're going to take a cut at the briefing in 2 weeks, but they can't really circulate it for us to edit.
Right. No, there's no need to defend it.
No, I'm just saying is part of it's I'm running into this on other things here too, is we can't have an exchange to
Right.
get things clarified.
Simply, that's all I'm saying, that's why I'm saying it here.
No, I appreciate that, but,
We can do that.
and I'd like to just kind
Yep.
of, we'll stop that one. Let's circle back to the point Alex was making about, we're looking at, right now, the $120,000 for full-day kindergarten is not included in the current budget model. Alex made some points about, there is a residual amount left out of what we're projecting and taking in for school choice. And he talked about the overall balance is projecting at $944,000, which has been higher than it has been in most years prior. It is higher than in all prior years prior. So I'm just curious what other people think about that.
So my concern, and it goes to the information we don't have tonight, which is the 3 to 5 year budget projection based on our current assumptions there. So once we start rolling these, once we start rolling from going, this 112, 120 into the budget there, what's it do for the out years there? And then, there becomes some undeterministic piece there about how many of our graduating school choice slots we're going to be able to replace there that will affect our future school choice income piece there. So with a single data point like this, it's easy to say that there's $112,000 to roll into the budget there, but without looking 2 years, 3 years out.
Let me check on that.
Let's not.
I don't know what you said.
Alex's phone at ESP. That's awesome.
Let me see if I can get an answer to that.
Well.
Yeah, your 3-year projection is.
And I don't mean it as an exact science, because we're here, but we've got some compounding numbers that is very difficult to look at as a single data point, and that's just my concern with trying to decide just exactly what's in front of me tonight there. I see the desire to do that, and I think if we started pushing it out and looking at, our current growth models or projections there, and if it looked like we were stabilizing at, $800,000 with the cascading increases there, I'd be a lot more comfortable with it, but I can't see that from tonight's numbers.
It's going to be very difficult to maintain the $450,000 that we're taking in through school choice throughout time, unless we're fortunate enough to add staff in a fashion that's going to allow us to maintain our school choice numbers. I believe, and school choice changes every week, so our graduating class, I believe, has 13 school choice students in that class. Principal Farity keeps updating me on the kindergarten enrollment projections for next year. We had 90 this year. We're at 125 already.
So at this time last year, we had 90 students projected. Right now, we're at 125.
So that's where I'm seeing the difficulty of rolling new school choice students into the district.
Right. And remember, this is just a budget working session. We would have
Yep.
professionalized this a lot more if it wasn't just a working session.
Yep.
But in order to even make a dent in that 13, then we would need to open up 5 choice seats in kindergarten. I'd like to open up more, but I can't. That would bring us to 130, which would require us to hire another kindergarten teacher, which is not in this spreadsheet. But you all know, we've talked about that. Now, we have a plan to help fund that, but it may involve some more school choice funds, depending on how the numbers work out in the end. The afternoon portion, I'm not concerned about. The morning portion, I am, because it has to come from operational funds. So those are all bits and pieces of that bigger model. And you're right, Alex, this is the healthiest balance that we've had for years. We worked hard to accumulate that balance. It doesn't mean that we want to be misers and keep collecting the coins, so to speak. But we also are responsible for absorbing the costs of any out-of-district placements that come into our district every year. With our community growing, we are getting more out-of-district placements every year. And there's a wide range of costs. The most expensive out-of-district placement that I've seen in the past 3 years is around $275,000 for one child. The cheapest one out-of-district would be about 65, I believe, right now. So
Not
it's...
including case, is that right?
Well, that's case. The cheapest case tuition, I believe, now is around 65,000.
I thought it was closer to 40, 50.
No, not since they've had to redo their model.
There's a lot that's happened in the past couple of years in case. So, and not to defend having that balance, but as a school committee, you need to be well informed about some of the potential costs that may happen. And we can't not offer that. I mean, that has to be paid for, and we have a choice. Either we keep a balance sufficient enough to pay for those costs, or we go to fall town meeting and ask the public for those costs, and if they're not approved, then regular education has to be downsized. So it's much better to have enough money in that revolving account to make sure that we're going to be okay from year to year. So it's not, I mean, there are a lot of things that are happening or could happen more correctly with that account. I think we just all need to be cognizant of that reality.
The point I want to make on the out-of-district tuition, though, is that after that year, when they move in, we then move it into the budget. That's into the operating budget through the town appropriation process.
With the exception of the one anomaly that happened 4 years ago, where we absorbed $400,000 of it into our operational budget. It wasn't in the appropriated budget. No, that was the reason, or one of the reasons why we had to downsize.
That was FY13.
Is because we had a...
Because the town didn't approve.
They didn't approve
budget
it.
increase to cover that.
And the local aid was going down.
This was for out-of-district placements you're talking about?
Yes.
That was the driver.
Yeah.
And that was most of the cost.
So it's 400,000 come fall that we didn't have, and we didn't have this, it didn't.
No, what happened was,
we
we funded it through choice when it happened, and then the goal was to get it
It was
into
to go
the
in the
appropriation
following
the
year.
following spring, and that was when the recession was going on, and it just, the money wasn't there. I mean, it just wasn't there. So the question was, do we cut regular ed? Do we cut police, fire, highway, some combination thereof? The determination at the time was, we're gonna cut regular ed. And we absorbed our budget line item absorbed the entire, and we cut everything we had to make it work. And we've been restorative since then. So,
And then that's when we tried to introduce the concept that we can't have we have a required services budget.
right.
Not level staffing budget, because it changes every year. And it took several years for those.
Right.
for
And
the
that's
boards to
why-
acknowledge that
right.
language.
I made the point that if we do fund something out of choice, historically, it's been with the philosophy that we're going to move it into the appropriation and the operating budget as quickly as possible, because that's where we're supposed to pay for public education, is out of that. The revolving funds are there to help us meet shortfalls, not to sustain operations. And while Alex is right, I mean, it is a healthy balance, and there is an argument that could be made that, well, let's roll the dice and let's see where we end up. And it probably wouldn't be, it's hard to believe that in 1 year we would be in a catastrophic situation where we realize that was a terrible idea. My concern is that in 3 or 4 years, we might say, gee, I wish we had $130,000 or $120,000 available to us to help us get past 1 more year of gaps. You know, that's the issue, is how much tolerance do you have? While our balance is up higher than it's ever been, we've also never allocated 100% of school choice, of a year's worth of revenue of school choice, to 1 year's worth of spending. We've never done that.
And the balance is up because it was a methodical process. We knew we needed to do this to ensure that we could continue to offer the services that we would like to offer to make sure all children are served well. So we rearranged what we were doing and made sure that we had the classroom capacity to absorb those students. And it's made all the difference in the world. If we wouldn't have done anything, our conversations today would be very, very different. So it's great that we were able to do this and we have this money, but it was certainly done in a planned fashion. Now, the bigger question is this sustainable with our current enrollment? And that's something we're all trying to figure out, because it isn't over the long run, depending on how we absorb or more correctly reconfigure our school district to include school choice students. But that's a conscious decision that the school committee would have to make.
So could I ask a slightly different question? So I think over the last several years, we were targeting, roughly 400, I think was, plus or minus amount of school choice funds that we were using. Next year, we're going to 338, which is a significant decrease relative to this year's expenditures of school choice funds there. Could maybe, I think we're going to get questions about that, and I guess, is there some balance between the two here, because we had been traditionally closer to 400 than we are next year.
It wasn't this year unusually high, though?
That's what I'm just trying to, maybe, again,
Last year was
the history is
higher.
So we shouldn't baseline it off of
that.
Last year's was higher
data
data
points.
Last year was higher. To be honest with you, right now, the reason is that it's lower is because we fit in everything that was on our priority list except for full-day kindergarten, which happens to be $120,000. If it was $100,000, then...
It could be $100,000.
Yeah, it could be, right. I mean, we could get closer to 400. It just so happens is that the 3-year plan was 120, and if we pull that out, you go to 338,
Yeah. If we aren't comfortable doing 120, which I'm not comfortable doing 120, I'm comfortable doing 112, and I know that I would like to see the data that Darren's looking for, but I understand that might be hard to come by because, you're not seers. You don't know everything. Now that it's Siri. But
just push that button again and maybe.
yeah, right? Yeah, who knows what'll happen. But I do think I would have a tough time justifying having $1 million sitting in the bank. And I do appreciate that we've built that up over the last several years. I think it's a wise choice. I think it's a very fiscally prudent choice, and I'm glad we've made it. And I would not support spending that all the way down. I think it's very important that we have that. I do think that having close to $1 million there I would have a tough time justifying that to the community. So maybe it's not 112, maybe it's some number in between 0 and 112. But I don't know how I would explain it to someone.
I think without knowing more, and I have a lot of questions, I think I'm leaning in the direction that Alex is leaning too. I was very vocal last year and the year before about my opposition to using $400,000 this year in school choice, and last year I think it was like high threes, 380 or something like that. And my opposition to that was that the school department was being forced to do something that we all thought ought to have been done through the regular town budgeting process. It wasn't a choice, to Darrell's language about level servicing. In order to meet that, we were having to draw from school choice. It was not the school department making a calculated decision to expand programming or to do anything that was on sort of our 5-year, we've called it a bunch of different wish list type thing. And so this year, I feel a little bit, again, I don't want my time on the school committee to be the time that sort of like the finances went awry, and 10 years from now, this full-day kindergarten thing's coming back and biting us. But I do feel like if it's a calculated decision by the school committee that we want to go into this and we're expanding programming, I feel a little bit more comfortable spending down the school choice money. I'm uncomfortable with the fact that $120,000 will put us for the first time ever into a deficit in school choice. So that will be the first time ever. I think it sets up a questionable practice. But that basic principle that this is a decision that the school committee is making to expand programming and not meeting, it's very unwise to meet operating, annual operating costs out of revolving funds. This is a little bit different.
To a degree, sorry to interrupt, but to a degree, we have been spending the 250 out of school choice for 11 years.
There are some questions that I don't, there's so many questions I don't know the answers to that would affect this, though. So, for example, I don't know enough about that, obviously, the questions I asked earlier, I don't know enough about that implementation plan and what the runway looks like for the 120, expanding over 3 years. What happens when we, what do we get for the $120,000 this year? And what does that mean for next year? Are we bound to 240? I just don't know enough about what we're getting for that 120 to know whether it would make sense without knowing what the next 3 years, to Dale's point, looks like. Whether we dive into the water now, not knowing what it's going to look like next year and the year after that.
I just want to touch real quickly, because I think another part, when we're talking about possibly incurring future costs, unless we're prepared to always take it out of school choice, we've got to get some buy-in from the selectmen that they're willing to pull that money into the operating budget next year. Otherwise, I don't really need to do the math. I know we can't sustain it there, because, the examples that Kelly used about these big hits there, they draw us down. They don't replenish that money. We have to build it back up again. So, it's just something I think if we wanted to be part of the program, we have to also get, the selectmen have to start agreeing that they're going to program that money into the future budget, or else we're going to, be pulling back next year from this.
And to Mike, to your point, there is a question of what is the runway for the next couple of years, and are our tuition kindergarten costs going to go up next year? It sounds like they may, right? But is that going to be a trend? Is that going to be a bubble year? And we don't know. And I wouldn't want. I think the good news for us is we can take this 1 year at a time, and because of the type of program it is, and because of the finances of it, we could spend, let's say, $100,000 this year, and then next year we say, yeah, that's all we can do. Maybe we can sustain that $100,000. Probably we can sustain that $100. Maybe not, but probably. But we don't feel comfortable going the next step yet, and we can say, okay, and maybe that's where we stay for a while. And instead of $4,000 and change, it's somewhere in the threes, and that still has a marginal benefit to the community. Doesn't put us in a financially jeopardizing situation, and it doesn't lock us in to do something. It's not a lease. We don't have to pay it every year. This is just a first step towards doing that. We can do it 1 year at a time.
But I agree with you, but I think once you do something, you need to continue to do the 100,000 or whatever we put in. You can't just say, sorry folks, we're not going to do it this year. That's poor business.
Sure, I agree.
Yes, the question
What
is.
really makes me nervous, I'm sorry, Matt, did you want to? Is this is the first time that we've ever put the number of staff that we have using our revolving fund. Ever. And in terms of the staff that we could put into the operational budget. Because if you look at, it depends on how you want to calculate the $808,000 increase in appropriation. But if you look at the first sheet that we actually looked at, we only had one ELL teacher added. And what we've done is through necessity, we're proposing that we add another Russell Street classroom teacher, a shared specialist for Russell Street and Shaker Lane, the assistant principal at the middle school, and an increase in Title I math time, and then another kindergarten teacher as a result of enrollment increases. So this is the first time that we've done this before, and I know we can do it, but I'm nervous about what happens next year. We're hopeful that it will be rolled over into our operational budget. I mean, that's what we want, and that's what we're going to advocate for. But just because it's the first time we've ever done this before, it makes me a little nervous. I'm fiscally conservative, and we all need to be fiscally conservative.
There are a couple of firsts here, no matter which way you look at it. It's going to be the first time we have a balance of close to $1 million in the account, or if we don't spend the money on full day, or if we do, it would be the first time that we approach that number where we spend as much as we take in. Either way, it's going to be the first time for something.
Yeah, just be careful though. We don't know for sure that it's going to be the first time that we end with a balance of close to $1 million. It depends.
Because someone can move into the district, something can
Exactly.
happen.
Just be careful.
It would be the first time we would vote a budget where our projection would be close to $1 million.
I like that semantical correction.
Thank you.
I'll allow it.
And I think it's a good point to keep in mind. Either way, this is new territory for us, which we got to because we have been fiscally prudent since we've been in a recovery restorative stage since FY13 to build up this account, which I think is a good thing. But I did want to point out that there are a couple, it's going to be a first either way, so I'm not sure. It's good to keep in mind, but I don't think that should caution us whether we do it or we don't. It's going to be a first.
Just, I want to expand on Kelly's point too. Keep in mind that there are two positions that we're choosing not to fill to make this work. The middle school librarian and the math specialist. We're not going to fill those. We want them. We're just going to choose to not have them this year because we're going to try to make some other things happen. And we're going to live without those positions for another year, but it's the admin's team full expectation as communicated to the budget subcommittee, they're still going to want those positions back in the operating budget next year. And if we can't get them, then we're going to say, well, we're going to continue to, we're going to have to hang on to the subsidizing that through the revolving funds again.
That would
I
be
think,
true.
I mean,
Sure. That would be true, though, whether we spend this money or not.
But
I
if
mean,
we have more money to, you see what happens is now we can, it would be easier to sustain that for another year if we have that extra $100,000, 112.
Right, because then we'd be asking them to build into the appropriations the 120 plus potentially 240 plus these
Right.
positions that Kevin's
That's-
talking
Well,
about.
we've
That's-
already have the 250 in that we have had.
It's
for 11 years that we haven't tried to do.
$88,000 effectively that we are subsidizing out of school choice that we wouldn't otherwise expect to do, that we are going to strive to get in to the operating budget next year, along with the middle school librarian and the math specialist. So now you're up to, you're 150,000 easy, that you're gonna have to get the appropriation rise, plus all the other stuff we know is gonna happen, the roughly $600,000 in salary requirements, you know, it was 586 this year, or 597 now. You know, that's what we're struggling with. You know, I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer here, but we need to be cognizant of, that's what we're struggling with. And if you throw another 100,000 or 75,000 or 90,000, whatever we decide, that's on there too. And it's additive.
And I'm sorry to make more work for the budget and the admin team here, but I mean, as I'm looking at the chart with the librarian and the math specialist school choice, flip back, it's chart 4 kind of thing here. So if we do our 2-year out budget projection, you know, just so that we get a 3-year projection in front of us for simplicity, because I think after that it probably starts getting really unreliable there. We have 2 scenarios. So this year, those 2 positions are going to be zeroed out and the funds are going to be used for a different position. If next year you zero them out, it results in one budget projection, but if you come back and say we need those positions, where's the, you know, that's a, you know, 79 plus 32, 81, $111,000 liability. That's either going to be school choice or budget or appropriation increase. And I think that's what I need to kind of see here, because otherwise you're going to be telling me we're eliminating those positions, we're not deferring those positions, right? And I guess you haven't made that call.
That's correct.
At this point.
Our intent would be to bring them back in FY19.
So we need to kind of see what the budget, you know, is that going to be school choice money or is that going to be appropriation money?
Appropriation.
That could be a part of the mission budget that you guys have been working on for a while, because, I mean, that would be
Right.
the most immediate year in that mission budget.
But I'm just saying is without that there,
I think you also need to remember, although it's not part of our budget, it's part of money required for the town to have. Not every employee, but when we look at a teacher addition to the district, the benefit package, which we don't pay, it comes from the town side, is around $23,000 per individual. And I know we don't pay that, but when I look at the overall town budget, we have to be cognizant of that too, because if we want this moved over to operational, if we're adding 3 staff or 4, then you're looking at close to $100,000 on the town side that they're going to have to come up with for benefits as well. And what I'm trying to do is neutralize some of that cost by looking at some of our other staff and reorganizing to try to not have that expense as great as $100,000 to the town. So, but again, right now it's preliminary. We don't know our student population for next year. We're predicting, but there are always surprises when September comes around. And we're going to try to absorb some of the positions so that instead of 4 new benefit positions, we may end up with 2. But it's not guaranteed at this point in time.
So, let me understand what you said. It would help you, instead of making a determination tonight, if we could model what next year might look like, showing what the projected increase in the appropriation would be as an initial effort. We won't know exactly what it's going to be, but we can assume that we're going to have about $600,000 in salary increases based on our contract, because it was close to that this year. And if we show everything that we're supporting out of school choice that we would like to get into the appropriation next year, and then we can scale it to say, well, if we only got this much and we had to support the rest of it out of choice again, that'll give us a better idea of what really is our tolerance level for adding to it to support, in this instance, tuition-free full-day, or start towards tuition-free full-day kindergarten.
And then I think, once we start, we're committed. I'm agreeing with what Kelly said there, is we can't say, well, we only did it once and it's not going to happen. I think once we start that path, we're committed. We can't technically commit the future boards to it, but I think implicitly everybody's assuming that that is the path we're on. And any changing that, I think would undermine everybody.
Do you mean changing?
The path to full-day kindergarten, tuition-free full-day kindergarten.
To 0?
That's the path that we want to be on.
So, I
And we
wasn't sure if
can't
you're
back
making
away from that.
I wasn't
Once
sure
we
if you're
commit to
making the
doing it.
point that if we were to do 120, which I don't think we will this year, but let's say we were to do 120 this year, I wasn't sure if you were making the point that we can't retract that 120 next year, that we have to continue to add to that.
I think once we start the path to full-day,
You have
tuition-free
to make the
full-day
jump,
commitment.
120, 243. You have to
We're making the
fully,
commitment to transition to tuition.
Or you could do it a 4-year plan, and you're going to do 90,
Whatever it is, we're-
180, 270,
we just need to know, for my benefit,
Yeah.
I'd love to know what this on-ramp looks like. I don't know what 90,000 buys us, I don't know what 120 buys us, I don't know what 360 is funding.
All I'm saying is I think we're committing to a path.
Right.
I agree with that. We should, the intention should not be, the
intention.
intention should be, if we're gonna fund any of it, the intention should be to fund all of it.
On a steady path.
On a steady
Not
path.
on a start and stop.
No,
methodology.
nobody's talking about.
And I don't think we should be very careful if we're going to get in a position that we have to withdraw from that path. Because we didn't plan a solid, ramp to that.
I mean, I agree, because the issue is that if you're not going to be able to, if you're not sure you're going to be able to sustain it, there are other potential uses for that money. Whether it's to meet something, an unexpected circumstance, then it's easier to do. Or maybe there's an opportunity that arises to, bring a resource on because something happened and it's a short-term thing, but if we add that resource, we're going to be in better shape. And we get into the opportunity cost type of thing that we should be thinking about. It's like if we use whatever number of dollars we use toward tuition-free full-day kindergarten, then that's an amount of money we can't use for something else.
Right. And I would like to have the flexibility in the budget that if something unforeseen comes up, 30 students and then 10 more come in over the summer, and we find out in October, we actually have to add a classroom, that we have enough financial reserve to actually take care of it. Then worry about how we get to town.
If we can't
No,
sustain the drive towards, because we all agree it is a priority to drive towards tuition-free.
No, I meant, you know, I'm just using exaggerated kindergarten registration
Yeah.
numbers, right? We're projecting we can meet it with our current teachers configuration. You know, 18 more apartments open up and 20 kids move in, we might find ourselves in a situation we have to hire a teacher. That's, you know, I don't know, but I'd like to make sure we have the flexibility that we can cover such contingencies.
I get a quick question for Kelly and the subcommittee. The reason for not funding then those other the two positions and using 111 of the 112,000 odd balance, is that purely because, that must mean then, right, that there's a calculated decision to add that 112 to the revolving fund?
Well, when we reviewed this, we just felt we'd be pushing the envelope if we left those positions in. We would be too vulnerable.
Because the way it looks like, and I'm sure the way it looks like to the audience and people who are looking at it, is that if we're not convinced that we need to reach the close to $1 million in the revolving funds, it looks like that's the goal that we're doing by saving the 112, because you've got plenty of incremental expenses that we could include to eat that 112, to not send the message that we're trying to build it up to $950,000. For example, 39 for the one librarian and.
You got to be careful about the $1 million. That's, from the Budget Committee's perspective, I would disagree with that point of view. The goal is to not use 100% of a particular year's influx and build it and put it towards operations without being confident that we can get it into the appropriation in the operating.
Listen,
The $1 million is not the driving thing. It's, are we willing to use 100% of an annual inflow and not be confident? The more we spend out of it, the less confident I am we can get all into the appropriation next year.
Totally agreed.
That's my hesitation.
I do totally agree. Sorry, let me, if I didn't just get to finish my thing. So, totally agree with that, and I'm very sympathetic about the school choice fund. I've been very vocal of that. But it does seem like if these other two positions are as important as they are to the student, learning and the goals that we're setting, then we've got $112,000 balance that we're adding right now. We could spend $32,000 and buy the middle school, pay for the middle school librarian. We're not spending 100% of school choice funds, to your point, but we're also not sending the message that we need to save $112,000. We could spend $79,000 only and spend half of it, or less than half of it. I guess my point is, if we're not choosing to spend all of it, or any of it, then we're sending a message that that we need the 112 or something else. And I guess that was my question, should we then, is these positions, is this such a big opportunity? I'm looking at the total picture. I'm not gunning for full-day kindergarten. I'm not gunning for the library system. Just, it sends the message that we're saving $112,000 for no reason.
I just want to reiterate a point that we made. For instance, with the math specialist, we're going to get some of the benefit of having someone in there by using professional development funds. So it's not like we're going to go without the benefit of what that position, we're just going to fund it a little differently, hopefully for 1 year. And then
the expectation then of
right,
getting it.
exactly.
And that's a fine answer,
Right.
but it does, beg the question of that tactic. And the other thing I've been just disheartened with over this is my third budget season. I don't think that the school choice accounts get the kind of respect from the rest of the boards as we think that it deserves. And so, year one and year two for me, it felt a lot like this account was being robbed. This seems to be the first year where our hands not being forced to dive really deep into that school choice fund. I'm not convinced that it's going to be like that next year. 2 out of the 3 years that I've been here, we've been forced to dive in order to just maintain the trajectory we were going on. I'm not convinced that next year, that this may be the opportunity where we eat some of these costs for things that we want, with the hope that it forces other people's hands to move it into the appropriations, because I'm not convinced that next year we're not going to be where we were last year, where we're going to be complaining that the other departments are forcing us to dive in $400,000 to $500,000 into our school choice funds. I don't think that these accounts are getting the kind of respect that we're holding them to. So preserving them at this point seems like could be an opportunity missed for us as these funds are being considered.
I do want to point out that on those last couple of years where we were not at all happy about dipping in, pulling more money out of choice than we were comfortable with, our sunniest projections for those years were still below 900 and change thousand dollars in that account. And if you look at just the number, we've had preliminary discussions maybe 2 months ago now, when we were just getting in with the town, and their initial number was not 808, it was, I think it was 580.
It was the amount.
It was 580.
It was just staffing
Salary.
increases, and we were like, yikes, that's not gonna work. And we weren't having the, we were saying, if we were to dip into school choice, what number would our comfort level be as a budget subcommittee, knowing full well we bring that conversation here, but having an initial, like, when do we, how bad of a shape are we in? And it turned out that we resolved that issue with the town, so it was a hypothetical situation for us. But our rosiest picture, looking at past years, I mean, this is 900 far exceeds that, the numbers that we had been talking about, front end balance. And the other point I wanted to make was that if we adopt a mindset that we are never going to spend 100% of what we take in school choice, and we practice that forever, that fund will continue to grow.
No, see, that's not
budget.
That's not
Can I
true.
finish my thought?
Okay.
Because I think your objection is exactly what I'm about to say, unless something big happens.
Right.
I don't think $1 million thing is going to happen.
It's not $1 million thing. It's a collection of things. And
But
the idea
200,000
would
in the
be,
following year and then-
from a financial management point of view, if you realize that you're building your reserve higher than you want it to be, or you're comfortable having, and you feel like you're missing out on opportunities, typically what you would be looking to spend that money on is non-recurring
things, yeah.
expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Because you won't be able to sustain it over time if it recurs.
Right.
So I don't think our goal should be I wouldn't be comfortable saying that, well, let's spend it down because we have the opportunity, because we're higher than we're comfortable. I agree, maybe we are, but I'm not comfortable spending it on things that are going to recur. I would challenge the administration to come back to us and say, what are some other things you want to do that can truly benefit the district that, you know, we haven't been doing? For instance, we have the $10,000, it's a very nominal increase, $2,500 per building for supplies and materials. I'm okay with that. If next year we tell them, sorry, you're going to go back to what you were getting, you're going to have to, I can live with that, versus having to let a staff person go, because I say, sorry, we don't have, we whittled it down, and a couple things happened, and now we're at 300,000, we can't do it, and now we got to let staff go. That's what we need to try to avoid.
Yeah, so I'm less concerned with us hitting a target, because I don't think there should ever be a set goal as to what school choice funds hit. Because I don't think you can do, I don't think it'd be wise to say, once we get to 900, we're good, because things always change. So we have to sort of play that by ear. But I think the principle of not going into a deficit situation is sound, because then that means that the next year, you know, it just, you're already then underspending and things go down, now you're trying to make up even a bigger gap. I can't stress enough, though, that, Mike, to your point, I don't have a dog in any of these fights particularly. I want to do what's best for the whole total picture of the school system. And so if the goal that if our goal is not to say we need to build, I'll be the first person to say in the years that we need to build up school choice funds, I will say it's tough, we have to make tough decisions, we got to rebuild these school choice funds. If we're not in that situation, then it's hard to say, then why aren't we spending a little bit of the 112 on some capital projects or something that would be benefit that we may not ever get again.
I agree.
Or we decide that this year, we expect the school choice to drop,
I
so we
agree.
need to add it this year and put it in the bank and.
The thing about school choice to keep in mind too, though, is that if we feel like, because we were conservative in our projections, things are turning out better than we wanted to, we can authorize the spending on a school choice beyond the budget cycle.
Mid-year, right.
Right, we could tell them, if you come to us with some ideas, and again, as long as we're not worried about it being a recurring expense, we could probably have a debate and get us down.
And we have also in previous years at meetings like this one, or the one we'll have in 2 weeks, we have appropriated school choice funds contingent on certain circumstances in the regular budget process, as well as visiting throughout the budget year.
So, I mean, what I'm taking away from this, and we don't have to be done necessarily, is though, but I just want to make sure I understand, is we can augment the presentation to make sure that there's a significant portion of it that strives to do what we've talked about in terms of showing what we're projecting and what we think we're going to need to do next year, and then we can even scale it so that we can see, well, if we did this, this is the impact, if we did a little bit more, this is where we would be. And that, I think, can help inform because that's the day we got to vote. I mean, at some point, we got to pull the trigger, and that's the day. So I'm more than happy working with Alex and the admin team on the presentation to make sure that's a part of it.
Can I ask for one thing? If you are comfortable with it, I can see how maybe you wouldn't, so totally fine, but maybe the two of you and Kelly could, would you feel comfortable as a subcommittee discussing what would be the next priority use of that, some of that, not all of the 112, but is that an exercise that you think is worth undertaking to say, if I was to spend half of that 112, this is our recommendation on what the best is for schools, or is that not?
We just began our budget process that way, with saying what are our priorities for the year, and they've been pretty consistent. I'm not saying no. I think we come back with.
But I would argue that we can ask the admin team if they can turn around in a couple of weeks, but the $112,000 isn't the right number. What is your list of things that if we were going to free you to spend some money out of school choice, with the caveat that stress that we would really prefer not to be it would be on non-recurring items.
Right.
What do you got for us?
Is that even, maybe you don't answer me now.
Let it go out to $300,000, let it go out to $940,000.
No,
Then we know.
maybe you don't answer tonight, maybe you don't answer tonight, but maybe it's worth, when you guys are talking, if it seems like an exercise that would be worth undertaking, it might be interesting to see.
We can certainly do that, but at the same time, we have these other areas that are recurring expenses that are still a priority. So, we can certainly go over here and say these are one-shot costs, but it's not going to eradicate the reality of these other positions that we need to put in our budget.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you for instance. They may come back to us and say, well, we weren't going to staff the middle school librarian because we didn't think we were going to have the money to do it. But based on this, and this circumstance, we now feel comfortable, and we know we want to staff it in FY19 anyway. We can do it if we do these three things. Is that okay? And we might very well say, yeah, that's fine, and then we're okay to move forward. So we just got to be careful about, and I don't want to also set an expectation of, well, you got the money, you showed us a list of things you're going to do, why aren't you doing any of them? Well, again, it always circles back to our balance of fiscal conservatism, flexibility, holding a reserve in case, there are significant unexpected circumstances. That's the job, and we just got to be careful about how we set the expectation about how we're going to execute.
And I don't want to be out of place here, but we also haven't finalized the teacher's contract. So we only have a budget holder here, not an actual number yet on it. So there is risk in our budget depending on how negotiations finish up. I don't want to say more than that, but, that's not a set number.
I mean, to your point, Mike, I think we can all agree that the admin team, while understanding that they need to be fiscally conservative and not box us in any corners, they'll jump at any opportunity they can get, and they've shown their creativity, and, we are an ascendant district because of that. They understand what the constraints are, but they don't give up. They just bide their time and, look for opportunity. When the opportunity arises, they're willing to act, so.
And this could be such a robust conversation. I mean, every year we have the conversation about fee structure. And, I mean, there isn't anybody around this table that wouldn't like to have an opportunity to decrease fees, but we need those fees to run our programs. So that could be part of part of this too, but again, it has to be sustainable. That's the key phrase here. We also have other things in our budget, I call them inherent liabilities, that we've tried to move into specific budget lines over the years, and we haven't been able to, and we pay for those items out of efficiencies that we gain in our energy line, for example. Do I feel comfortable as a superintendent that we have to do that? It's not the way I prefer to do business, but we've made it work for 6 years. And
10.
For 10 years. I mean, my budgeting practices, if I have a recurring expense, there should be a line and it should be operational. But from our discussions with the town, they view that as, well, you figured out how to pay it for X number of years, we're not concerned. You'll continue to figure out how to pay it. So we have some of those things still in our operational budget that's a liability that we really don't talk about that much. And please understand, I would like to get all of this. It's just, we also have to be concerned about sustainability and affordability as we go forward. And I'm just being cautious.
I think my point was taken though, right? We've got 112,000. Which, are we sending a message that the only purpose for this is that it's the time to add it to our revolving fund or not?
And I respect your request there, but I think the priority needs to make sure we have a handle on the recurring future costs here, so that, if they have a choice of make a wish list or drive out where we've got all those risks for recurring costs, I'd prefer them spend the time on that part of it. Maybe keep the, as opposed to a frontline tasker about some of the other items where it could be spent on.
And it's not a question of opening it up to anything, because the only item, and we also don't want to close it only to full day K either, which is why it would be good to hear other ideas. But full day K is the only item that we have asked for this year that we have not projected funds. So that needs to be a part of the conversation, as well as every other variable that we've discussed tonight.
That falls in the category of recurring costs versus...
Yes. As does the 250,000 that we've spent for 11 years as a school choice.
Versus for $50,000, we could do a curriculum review and buy new materials for this class. That's a one-time expense.
Right.
Which could be elevated in priority based on one-time needs, which is a different decision process than how much you want to roll into your recurring operating budget. That I guess, but that's why I say I think that's a second level priority versus understanding
that makes sense.
The projection there. That's what I meant by my comment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We're also in, next year will be year 5 of our bus contract, and so we have to go out to bid, and based off, I don't have numbers yet because we haven't gone out to bid, but they haven't increased the price in 4 years now, so the last time we went out to bid, they increased the base contract by 15%. I fully expect that again at the end of next year, so we are looking to the future at some of those, so.
I think after listening to the conversations tonight, what might be helpful, and we've done this exercise before, actually last year, if we assume that we're going to take in close to $400,000 next year in school choice, I think that's a bit high, but we'll just use that for now. What percentage of that money, as a school committee, do you feel comfortable attaching to recurring costs? And that really should be our driver over time. Come up with a percentage. Is it 80%? Is it 75%? That kind of drives your process then, and it's consistent throughout time. That's a good point.
And to take that a step further, we talk about what the balance has been in our revolving accounts. Typically, when we were charged initially to build up the reserves in those accounts, kind of $650 in the school choice account was what everybody was happy with, but in reality, what it should be is a percentage of your overall budget. You should say, our goal is to have a reserve of 10% of the overall budget, because we feel like year by year, if we have that, we're usually okay to cover unexpected circumstances.
That's smart.
It might not be 10%, it might be 2.5%, it could be 18%. But that's another way to, instead of looking at it in flat dollar figures, you look at it as a percentage and you drive towards that. And then that informs your decisions about what you can do with, after you achieve those goals, you got some extra on the side, what do you do with it? You know, that's where your opportunity is.
An industry standard for a public school district would be between 5 and 7%.
What, do you happen to know hand where we're at?
It's probably 3 or 4% right now.
Do you know of any school districts that have 5% to 7% in their revolving funds, or rather in their reserves?
They really don't advertise that, to be honest.
There's a-
So you don't want everyone's books, or is it?
Yeah,
The vocational schools have a cap on what they can keep as, I forgot, excess reserve, I forgot what they call it exactly, but public schools aren't.
I think to your point, Alex, we're probably in really good shape comparatively speaking, because typically, as a town, we are. In a lot of different ways, our fiscal conservatism has driven us to be in better shape, healthier by those types of measures than many other towns. Now, that's not necessarily all kudos to us. Other towns have a lot more pressures, maybe, in terms of who they are and what they're striving to deal with, their challenges and things like that. I mean, in some ways, Littleton is Littleton, and it's manageable, more manageable in some respects than larger communities or communities with a different socioeconomic breakdown.
And with different decisions that we make.
942 is like about 4%.
I think
What did you
probably,
use as a total?
Hmm?
Did you use appropriation or spending?
22 million.
Oh, okay.
21.5 plus $1 million increase.
So
I
what was
used
it, about 4?
4%.
Just without validating numbers.
I think spending, having 5% to 7% in reserves is kind of like fully funding OPEB. Being a- Like, it'd be
Right,
great
if
to
you-
do.
right,
but
if you've
we
done
all
everything else you've
recognize-
always wanted to do, and you've still got enough money left over to build that up, then you should do it. But you shouldn't do it at the expense of meeting your mission,
Right.
which is, providing a strong educational background.
I think we've got, I feel like we've gotten a lot of direction tonight about what we need to prep for the next meeting in 2 weeks in terms of the data.
My feeling is that you shouldn't be funding a recurring expense, because I can't count on school choice. Just looking at the number of the people moving into the town, that's going to be seats that are going to be disappearing. We can't count on these numbers. However, I do want to send a message to the community that we are in favor of full-day kindergarten. So what do we have to do in order to get selectmen, get the FinCom on our side and realize this is something that we want to achieve in the near future, no more putting it off. I mean, that's why I wouldn't mind seeing just some kind of token to show the public that this is what we want to do.
I mean, my thoughts
Right.
on that, sorry.
No, sorry, I was just.
I mean, do you do bold action? I mean, we've done cases before, sometimes is that we funded it for the first year, but the selectmen have signed up to fund it the second year. I'm willing, what you say is we would dip into school choice and pay for the first year of that transition, but we need the selectmen to sign up that they're going to pick it up in next year's budget. We did this 2 years ago in a couple of line items there, and they agreed to pick it up, and we funded it the first year. But without parents expressing that desire to the selectmen, without their commitment that we're going to be able to sustain it, we got to get the rest of the people that are going to fund this on board that, that we could do it. And then I'd have a totally different answer, is if the selectmen said, sure, we're going to program into next year's budget the 240 for this, I'd almost in a minute change my decision on,
I would have already made that motion.
right?
Yeah.
But we don't have that,
Right.
that commitment.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the FinCom chair he said on air that he didn't see how we could do it, and he said it's really the school committee's issue, they got to deal with it. So I mean, that was one person's point of view on one committee, but it wasn't.
He also said that our full-day K tuition was similar to a lot of surrounding towns, but missed the point that it's the third highest in the state. So he doesn't come to our meetings often. Sorry, not to pick on him, but I'm, in general,
It's
members of the other boards
context. Yeah,
don't have the insight that we do on the issues.
But it's the context of, those other boards are the ones that are making the town side allocations for this stuff. And if they don't believe it's important because they haven't heard from the parents that it's important, it will not be important to them. We know it's important to us. We know it's important to the people that are sitting here tonight. I don't control the town's allocation on that appropriation. It's their budget item.
We do at town meeting. The other point I wanted to add before it sounds like we're winding down. The other point I wanted to add was that.
You missed your hour.
Discussion.
This has been one of the best conversations we've had in the school committee since I've been on it.
Shucks, I'm gonna blush. We've talked a lot about the mission budget over the last year and a half. I know it's always gonna be a work in progress, but I think there has to be a time when we come out and show what we have. And we can preface it with, this is a work in progress, and here are the assumptions we're making, and we recognize that. But I do think we need to put something out there, and I think that in 2 weeks, that would be a good time to do it, if it's ready. And I know, Kelly, you had said a couple months ago, it was very close to ready, you were just waiting on some more data.
It's ready to go, it needs to be updated already, but, I
Yeah.
mean, that's what it is.
That's the nature of it.
And if we could, I know this is being a little picky, but a mission budget
Strategic long-range budget.
is something that you should be able to do as an organization. If you can't perform your mission, you have to ask yourself why you're in business. To me, it's a vision budget. The vision is where you're headed, and you have a strategic plan to get there over time. So, I'm picky about language
And I was so good tonight, too, until just then. I apologize.
No, and it's not you, it's just the deliberations that we have with our other audiences talk about mission as a directional budget. And by definition, a mission is what you exist for. So we can roll that out, and I mean, you all have, we gave you access to it, I believe, and we can certainly spend some time talking about it. And I think it would be helpful as a finance subcommittee here to maybe try to do a projection in terms of what we're going to be looking for FY19 in operation, and see what that number looks like, and it might be helpful in making these decisions.
I believe we'll definitely do a minimal baseline. I think we can come up pretty easily with a baseline projection on what we would start off next year looking for. I mean, you just take the salary number and it's the stuff that we're supporting, and you can go from there, and then we can, we have, historically, we understand where our expense levels go up, and, maybe that's the way we should end all of our
Well,
and then
in order to get some of the numbers I pulled up last year, I mean, some of the themes are the exact same things. They're the materials that we're underfunding. I mean, so we know some of the other things other than just straight salary and things there that we can, trend those forward. And obviously, the reliability of those numbers decreases the further out there, but I think it puts us in the driver's seat for having that conversation.
No, I think it's important. And I do want to say, we've talked about what we want and what we don't have to this point in time. But if you look at the last 6 years in the town, we've done a lot of things as a town. I mean, you look at our capital budgets in terms of building maintenance in a proactive manner and planning for the future. I mean, that was a huge item that the town jumped on board with, and we're all in a better spot for that. So, we've shouldered, as a town, benefit increases that are double-digit every year for employees, and that's not easy to do. The town has also become more cognizant in OPEB fund contributions, and I know those are debatable, but, the bottom line is it's a liability for us all. So we have made significant strides in staffing. I mean, we've been able to restore some of the staff we've lost, and the other departments have been able to meet the impending needs that they have. So it's not as if we're not moving forward. We just like to move forward faster than we are, but we all know that there's a magic number that we all try to figure out what it is, and nobody wants to go over it because you know what happens if you do. And we all want everything we can for services in the town. We're concerned about education, but we also have to realize that we compete with other departments that also carry out very important functions. So.
Is there anything else?
Good.
I'd open up to you guys, and preface of that, I mean, you've all been listening very carefully, I appreciate that. This was a little bit longer discussion than we had anticipated it to be, but I think it was very worthwhile. I think you can see where we are. We're supportive of it, but it's as always, when you're budgeting, it's a balance that you're trying to strike, both in terms of our own budget, but also with being cognizant that the town does have other requirements in providing services. I think you can see we're struggling with this. I don't think we've said yes or no tonight, and I think there's going to be a little bit more discussion. And we'll provide some more information, so hopefully it will bring some clarity to us as we get ready on the 23rd to vote it. That's where we're at right now. So anybody that would like to comment, please come on up.
Hi, my name is Carrie LeBoy, and I have 2 children right now at Shaker Lane in the preschool program, 1 incoming kindergartner and 1 2 years out. Free kindergarten is important to my household, but honestly, the reason why I'm really here is right now the program isn't structured appropriately for a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. The expectation of what the teachers cover, the expectation of what my children learn has increased tremendously in the last 30 years. Why are they in the same program I was in 1986? They're in a half-day program just like I was. And I really think the money is truly important, but I think full-day kindergarten will ultimately redistribute. I don't want to say save. I think it'll set our children up to succeed, but it will redistribute money. Right now, you're running 3 midday buses for 19 kids. You're talking about renegotiating your busing contract. Get rid of midday busing. If you have...
We can't make full-day kindergarten mandatory.
I
For
understand.
families, we can't.
I understand that.
Do that. What we could do is we could cut the bus, if we had 10 kids who were using it, we could say, if you're doing half-day, pick the kids up or send them to Tiger's Den.
Tiger's Den's not open that early.
Which we could then,
I have a child in Tiger's Den as well.
That scared me, that comment.
So, but I'm sorry, that would save the district. If you have a kid in half-day kindergarten, you either have a nanny at home or you're at home yourself. Pick your child up. The other thing is kids that are going morning only are missing out on specials. They're missing out on art, music, gym. That's not a full education. And I understand you cannot mandate parents sending their children full day, but you also can't mandate children to go to kindergarten. We don't have to send our children to kindergarten. It is a choice. You don't want to send your kids to a full-day program? Pay for a half-day program. It's really that simple. We're paying right now. You want to pay for a half-day program? Pay for a half-day program. You want to pay for a full-day program? Pay for a full-day program. But the way the program is structured is not in the best interest of my kids. And that's where I get very frustrated. And to be honest with you, I don't really want to send my child to the Littleton kindergarten because of the way it's structured. I will, because I want to keep them with their friends. But it's a stressful environment. It's stressful for the teachers, it's stressful for the kids, and they're not able to learn in the way that they need to learn the way that it's structured. If you give them a full-day program, maybe there won't be so many kids in transitional. Maybe there won't be so many kids that need reading specialists. I really think that the full-day program is the way to have our children succeed, and maybe need to cut out some of these other services later on because they won't be needed, because we would have prepped our children at a more appropriate pace than what you're currently doing. Right now, we're failing our kids by not giving them the tools to succeed in a full-day program. It's been proven. There's dozens of studies that show full-day kindergarten kids are more successful than half-day kindergarten. The money is certainly, anybody that runs a household knows you have X number of dollars and you have this pile of bills and they need to be even. Hopefully, you have more money than you have bills. I get that. But really, it's the program that I'm here for. I'd love to not have to pay for kindergarten. Who wouldn't want to have to pay a bill? It would, but we need to look at the program itself, because right now, the school committee is failing our kids. And, I mean, I have notes and notes and notes from this meeting, which I'll be emailing you guys all tomorrow. But we need to make our children succeed. And right now, half-day kindergarten's not cutting it.
Thank you.
My name is Brett Jeffries, 3 Manchester Drive. Sort of new to Littleton, and my son is here quite late. But I think you make a great point, as this is my first time coming to something like this, so welcome. You know, this is a great opportunity. We have 3 boys. We have twins who are in pre-K. My company moved me up here. The disruption that the lottery system creates, going into the having to worry about planning around your family for the fact if you're going to get full-day kindergarten or half-day kindergarten. Like, I think, to your point is, you need some level of consistency. And through having a full-day program allows parents to make decisions around the structure of the day. The short-term impact, long-term impact of being consistent, I think, would actually save money in the short run for the school for special programs. My son's in transitional, and that's something we have to work through. And by having to worry for the last half a year that if we were going to have my twins in a half day or full day, my wife cannot gain employment. We have to focus on our son, but to have consistency in the short term, having structure in the family starts in kindergarten. And the opportunity you have here, and I think the numbers definitely need some work. It's a good point. Like, we came in, you see the 93% A minus. Like, all right, this is a win. But when you think about the compounding numbers, we recognize the challenge. But looking creatively through what you're trying to accomplish in that midday to transitions and stuff, by taking that out, you can possibly find some funds there. Benefits the family from structure. Makes a decision. My wife goes back to work. And that becomes tax money. But also the town becomes even more attractive to people to come into, because this is another competitive advantage. My company has personally moved 10 families to this town in the past year and a half. So we're about to move probably another 300 jobs. So Littleton's at the top of the list. You guys are just in Boston Mag. So you made a lot of points I was thinking about, but by finding a way to help the parents, full-day kindergarten helps the kids. Controlled environment starts them out in that structure that could benefit my kids, but it'll benefit the family to support my son. But to the point of the school, what is amazing about having moved up here is the commitment from the school to help out the children. So having sat with Dr. Faraday, talking about my son, and having a conference room of people to sit there and the commitment to my one person, we're taking, say, money away from the town for my child's special needs. But I think if you have the structure and the commitment, this contradicts what you're doing for my son on one side, but that commitment's just not, it's not there. So I think the message, and you brought it up, is we spoke about this for a few years. I've only been here for a year. And thinking about this isn't mandatory, and the fear of, like, not from the financial responsibility, but also what could happen if it's not legally responsible. You could say, we gave it a try. We really wanted to do it. You reinforce your message, But if you say the message right at the get-go, say, this is something we really want to try, we want to give back to the community, it may or may not work, but don't be in fear of something you have to commit to for the next 10 years. I know you don't want to do it for that 1 year or 2 years, but I think you guys have to give it a try. You got to give it a try for parents like us, to have the consistency to contribute to, back to the town, to allow the educators to focus on needs of children, but to not have, my children are in chaos. So I want my wife, it's great, she doesn't have to work, but I want her to work. And I'd like her not to have to go to school. She has to go to school 4 times. But I think it's a great messages, and there's commitment to the point of young parents can't come out. I was at work at 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure I could come here today. But you hit it on the nail on the head, exactly the impact of things, and just allows us to take more time. But you're giving us support. I think you guys you should think about the little things, how to reduce bus transportation in midday at point of a contract. Becomes consistency, it allows you to support full programs, becomes more attractive to attracting best teachers, et cetera, et cetera. So, again, I think just really think about looking at how to get the numbers to work, look at what the disruption of half-day does, but to families to be the inconsistent approach that family and decisions have to make. Knowing that sooner than later, it allows people, you'll get more support from the school, and I just think to be consistent is something, a risk you really should strongly consider. And if we have to think about going to other folks, I'm learning local government, never even thought about it before until I moved up here. It's something I think it can be done, and the short-term and long-term impact of finances, I think it'll be a win for everybody. You may not see on paper, but you may not have a child who needs an IEP. And I'm not going to shy away from it. It's something we have to work through, but consistency early on may have helped that problem. If I had moved and disrupted the family, that's the other thing I have to think about. But for those who have grown up in town or are here, starting out full day gets them in there and makes the job easier for the teachers as well. So a little rambling on, but thank you. Great points. Thanks for having me and talking to my wife to bring me here, and looking forward to contributing as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Justin McCarthy, 7 Stony Stream. So I think there was a great discussion tonight, a lot of great points. One of the best points, I think, was you guys want this. Everyone here wants this. There are 60 other people that couldn't be here tonight, so imagine a room full of people, the signatures that we collected. Yeah, your goal was 120. You've got 112. If you don't spend it, what are you telling the selectmen and the finance committee? I mean, how serious are you about this? The money's available. I get that it's less than desirable source, but it's sitting there, and your reserve fund is 940 something. So hats off to this school committee and the previous school committees before. You've done a wonderful job of building that up. I don't want you to be worried about the fact that it's a $360,000 obligation, because no one's asking you to spend 360 grand. You don't have it, you can't do it. But if you could spend 100 grand and keep 12, and that way you've not spent everything that you take in, you can go back to the selectmen and the FinCom and said, hey, we did everything we could. We gave it our best shot. We got a lot of support from the town. We need the FinCom and we need the selectmen's help going forward to continue to fund this. If 365 days from now we're projecting numbers that can't support a kindergarten program or an offset towards the kindergarten tuition, no one from town's going to fault you for not providing a reduction. You can't spend money that you don't have. And the reality is, this year you've got it. We're up over $4,000 a year for kindergarten tuition, and 120 was your goal. There's about 120 kids in the kindergarten program. That's $1,000 a kid. So there are 19 families that only choose to put their kids in a half-day program, most likely because they don't want to spend any money, or they're not able to spend any money for a full-day program. Well, those 19 families might be able to put their kid in a 2-day full-day program. I mean, that's 40% of the work week, or the school week. And there are 23 families that are only doing a part-time, which is 2 through 4. So those 23 families might get an additional day as well. So the 112 or the 100 or whatever I hope you guys decide to do, I want you to know that it is significant. Every family is going to be impacted coming through the program. And I think what you're doing is you're sending a strong message to the selectmen and the FinCom that you guys are serious about this, and you're going to need their help going forward to sustain it. And if ultimately they turn their back on this, and their money's not there next year, well, you guys gave it everything you could. You can't spend the money you don't have, so let's do it this year. The money's there, show your message. We all want it, so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justin. Anybody else? All right, thank you all for coming out. I will remind everybody that our next meeting is on the 23rd. Again, it's sort of a special meeting. We're really going to just talk about the budget and vote it, but that will be kind of the draw the line in the sand. So we'd love to see all you out to listen to that and participate in that discussion. Any other business?
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, LCTV, for
Thanks, Chris.
coming out on short notice.